Ty Wulf here again. We're going to talk about intervals one more time. This is just going to be a pretty quick video to tie up some loose ends. We have one more video about intervals after this, and we will have covered every single type there is to know. So what we'll be discussing today is the perfect fourth and the tritone. So if you remember from before in one of these videos, I mentioned how some of these intervals are considered to be perfect intervals, and some of them are not. The distinction is that a perfect interval doesn't have a major and a minor version, right? So like the thirds or the sevenths or the seconds, they all have major and minor versions, but an octave or a fourth or a fifth, they don't have that distinction, so they're most commonly known as perfect fourth, perfect fifth, perfect octave. So the perfect fourth is the one that we haven't covered yet. I'm just going to show you all about it really quick. It's going to be the next step lower that sounds in key from our fifth, which is our power chord note, right? So we've covered it lots, the root, fifth, octave. So we're just going to take the fifth and we're going to move it down here. That's the perfect fourth. That's how you find it on the fretboard. Whatever note you're on, it's the next note on the next string right below it, same fret. This is effectively 5 half steps up from the root note. The perfect fourth is kind of an interesting interval because it lies in this weird sort of middle ground between being consonant and being dissonant. And I guess it's sort of whatever case you use it in depends on whether it's consonant or dissonant. The perfect interval distinction in itself denotes that it's consonant by nature. So if you're using these in chords or something, it's going to sound consonant. If you're playing perfect fourths by themselves in some context, or say, if you're harmonizing a melody and you're harmonizing the upper voice using perfect fourths, then that's probably going to sound pretty dissonant. So it's kind of cool how case by case it can be consonant or dissonant. So the tritone is the one we're going to talk about next, and the tritone lies 1 half step above that perfect fourth. On the fretboard, you just go same fret, next string, and you skip it forward 1. Oh, that's nasty. So effectively that's 6 half steps or 3 whole steps above your root note. 3 whole tones is another way you could say that, right? So that's why it's tritone. There's 3 whole tones above your root. Some of the real cool kids out there call it the devil's interval. Actually, this one has a lot of names. It's also known as the Augmented Fourth, because like I mentioned, it's just like the perfect fourth, but you add a half step. And going by that same reasoning, it's also called a Diminished Fifth, because it's like your perfect fifth, and down a half step. So again, this is just a very dissonant interval. Wherever you use it, it's going to create a lot of tension, a lot of harshness. It's very rare that you're actually going to see this interval in a normal key signature, so you can't just be playing in some key and accidentally hit the tritone. There's actually just one spot where it lines up right and makes one certain chord sound how it's supposed to sound, and in almost every single other context the tritone sounds very dissonant. It's called the dominant 7th chord. That's the chord in which the tritone is consonant, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Just like all the complicated chords, we're just going to talk about them all later. And I think that about covers it for this time. I don't really have many big chord shapes to show you using the fourth or using the tritone, because they just aren't commonly used that way. Just flash those charts on how to find the intervals up there really quick again. So that's perfect fourth, the tritone, which is also the augmented fourth or the diminished fifth. So that's about all I got to say for today. I have another video about intervals coming up, and then I'll be done talking about it for a minute. This has been Ty Wulf. Hope you guys have fun out there.